Hello everyone, this is Master Viktor Neustroev and thank you for joining this workshop. Today we are going to talk about how to become an uncomfortable opponent. So how to create difficulties for your opponent, how to obtain such a playing style which is inconvenient for your opponent, even if you don't know him personally. I mean, if you don't know his openings, if you don't know his playing style. Okay, so what do you think? Let's wait for more people to join or we can start. Okay, so we have some new guys. Suchitra from which country? Oh, no, he didn't mention. So it's 1625 in classical, quite a quite a good rating. Is it 1625 FIDE or just chess.com? Okay, so from India, 3 rank from India, perfect. The tournament on December the 3rd. Well, it depends on your playing style. How can you prepare for this tournament? So, well, work on puzzles. You have a few more days. Repeat your openings. This is what you can do. Can you do anything else? Well, I don't think you have much time. So repeat openings and work on puzzles, but stop working on puzzles one day before the tournament. So on the 2nd of December, you shouldn't be doing any puzzles, only repeating openings. Okay, anyway, let's start. So what does it mean to be an uncomfortable opponent? It means your task is to create a maximal psychological and practical pressure on your opponent, forcing him to feel out of his comfortable zone. And these will provoke him to make mistakes. So what you need to do to become such a player, such an uncomfortable opponent? So first of all, you should be a stable and solid player overall. You should, maybe you don't need to know the openings very well, but you should really understand the opening principles. But you should understand the main concept of the openings you play and the concept of openings in general, what you should do. So how you control the center, how you develop your pieces, what these pieces do, and how you put the king to the safe place. You should be able to calculate well without serious blunders and mistakes in visualization. How to practice it? Well, there are several courses. I also have an exercise that I kindly recommend you doing, so you can search it on YouTube, train your tactical vision. And you are very likely to find my my YouTube video. Maybe later I will provide you with the link. What else? Do puzzles, do courses devoted to tactics, which especially explain tactical features of the position, such as my course, Train Your Tactical Vision. What else? You should know the endgame. Some basic endgames, some like for example king and pawn versus king, like rook endgames. That provides you with more confidence of what you should be doing in the end game. So for example, in the rook endgame, you know that you should keep your king and rook active. Once you do it, it will be already uncomfortable for your opponent. And the main source of this inconvenience, or the main source of your uncomfortable play, is your playing style. You should make such moves which are unpredictable or not so easy predictable. And at the same time, you should create problems for your opponent to solve. So you shouldn't just make the moves that you memorized for example, in the opening, but you should play such moves that you think your opponent will be not ready to. So, for example, let's say you know Queen's Gambit until move 20, but your opponent knows it too, and he played it like 100 times. Deviate in the beginning, maybe at move 4, 5, or 6, and play something else that is rare, and he probably doesn't know it. If before that with e4 you always played with e4 against Sicilian, you always played knight f3 and d4, try something else that you think your opponent isn't ready for. Fiancetta your bishop on g2, or even play Rasalima variation, or even a Lapin variation. What else? Create some inconvenient pawn structures where it's not easy to come up with what to do. So, for example, positions with isolated pawns, or positions with hanging pawns, or with many pawn islands. These positions are usually very dynamic, and just one mistake of your opponent can decide the game in your favor. Your opponent should always feel the pressure, and that pressure will result into his mistakes. Well, you definitely shouldn't let your opponent to play his favorite positions. So, for example, before the game, especially if you don't know who you're going to play with, study his opening repertoire. What he plays, what he likes to play. Ideally, it would be great if you can study not only his openings, but understand his playing styles. Does he want to pass the game to the end game? How well does he feel in the end games? If he is really good, then try to keep queens on the board until the end of the game. What else? Complicate the game. Try to avoid early exchanges. Try to keep more pieces on the board. Well, however, if you see that having more pieces on the board leads to like a disadvantage of your position, then yes, you have to trade. But with more pieces on the board, it's very likely that your opponent sooner or later makes a mistake. You may make a mistake too, for sure, but our task is to play for a win always. So that's why that's okay. Make the position more complicated, and a player who has less experience or who is more in under a psychological pressure are very likely to make a mistake. Well, chess is also a psychological game. Some people say that it's 90% psychological game. Judith Polgar actually says it's 50% psychology. Well, I would say it's like between 50 and maybe 70, something like that. What does it mean? It means that making the moves which are a bit inconvenient for your opponent will very likely to provoke him to make a mistake. So that's why in the position, your task is not always to find the best move, but such a move that the human player will likely to react properly. So this is how I play. Well, of course, there are really good moves, and I sometimes know them, sometimes not. But if I choose between the very best move and such a move that is not good, not the best, but still okay, however, I understand that this move forces my opponent to do a great job calculating variations or trying to find the only moves, I will likely to play this exact inconvenient move. So that's your task. If you can also play on time, but it doesn't mean that you should obligatory force your opponent to be low on time and then you should simply play rapidly. No. When you play on time, take your time and still keep playing solid moves. But don't simplify if your opponent is low on time. Create problems for him, so force him to calculate the lines so that he has to spend more time, and this is where he may start panicking. What else? If let's say you can even sacrifice a pawn for some initiative, but make the position complex enough that requires time for your opponent to decide which move he should play to not lose the game. Don't show your emotions during the game, even if the position is winning or losing. Just don't show. It's like poker. So I'm not asking you to bring sunglasses, but just try to not show emotions. Sometimes you may show emotions. Like, for example, if you prepare a certain opening for your opponent and he goes exactly the line that you prepared, you can show some like misunderstanding that you didn't expect it. That may work. He may think that, oh, this guy is not prepared against this line, so I'm very likely to punish him and get at least some advantage in the opening. And you just, okay, so you make your opponent overconfident, and that is a mistake too. Always look for a counterattack, of course, even if your position is bad, and do not resign too early, even if you think, well, what I say. So if you think your position is absolutely losing, you don't have any single chance, resign. But if you believe that it's still there are still some chances, maybe some mistakes will be played here or there, try to do your best. Play from the beginning. And of course, if it is a tournament, then you know who you're playing with. Search for his games. Where? A chess-based database, on find his account on chess.com or Lichess. Or there are other websites that publish the games. So what are they? Chess Tempo, for example. Just search for your opponent name and then write down chess games and you'll find his games on the internet. Okay, there is a good comment on chess on YouTube. A lot of people don't have a real playing style. Hard to tell which moves will be less convenient. Well, I do not agree with it fully. People do have playing styles. The problem can be that you don't fully understand what your opponent's playing style is. So, for example, my playing styles are sharp positions with many calculations, with many lines, maybe with some tactics. But the key idea, well, why do I win? I overcalculate my opponents. I also know openings well, so I can get advantage in the opening stage of the game. And if we deviate from a well-known opening to a unknown position, I am very likely to set my pieces better. So this is my playing style. By studying your opponent's game, you can know his playing style. Not all the details, but at least some that you can take advantage of. Okay, so let's start. Let's start with this first example. This is a game between how do you say this name? Who can read it? Ledgers or Lajos Portisch versus Laios. Okay, thanks. Laios Portisch versus Mikhail Tal. And Mikhail Tal here has to take a responsible decision which move to play. Should he retreat back to b7? But then he has to defend the position. I don't think that d takes c6 will be played because bishop c6 and black is okay. Black improves their bishop. But let's say this and then bishop b2. C takes, and this is still a very bad knight. That's why, well, this is unpleasant. And if Mikhail Tal was playing for win, he should play something else, something inconvenient. And he decided to sacrifice a piece, knight c4. That wasn't the very best move according to the computer, but that was definitely uncomfortable move for Laios Portisch. Knight takes c4, c takes d5. Not knight d5, c takes d5 to maintain a pin. Then what? Oh, well, this is definitely a mistake, so then bishop a1 will be played. So knight goes to a3. How would you play in this position? Okay, there is a suggestion of knight e4. What else? Bishop e2. Which bishop e2 move? I don't understand. Bishop b7. Sorry, Brian, I don't understand the moves. There is no bishop d7. You mean knight e4, bishop b2? This is what will be played. d4 is a move. Yeah, actually he played d4, but d4 again is unpleasant, but at the same time very risky. This is exactly what happened. What about knight e4 move? I don't think it's a good idea. So why I think it's a wrong move? Because this time they can take on d5. The queen is protected, so that's why there is no pin on the c file. And after that, it can be just this, bishop e4. Two knights for a rook, but there are a lot of threats. White seems to have pressure and advantage. That's why that move wasn't played. Instead, it was d4, but d4 is a sacrifice. It's a sacrifice of the rook. So d takes e3, the bishop retreats. That's why he plays queen e8. Now he's down a full rook. Well, a full rook for 2 pawns. But he has initiative, and that was his main idea. So if he has to play for a win, he should create complications. And Lajos Portisch, of course, was a very strong chess player, so he successfully defended. In this position, he played queen d1. There was a better move was queen d3 to try to trade queens off. Well, of course, it may not happen, but e4 square is occupied with the bishop, so and then f3 can be played. White has chances to realize advantage. He played instead queen d1. Well, not a mistake. Knight e4, protecting here and potentially threatening to do something like that, maybe to take here, maybe to jump there. Well, I don't think this is a good move. But let's say they play so. What do you think black would continue with? Well, queen d5 is interesting, but can't they just play bishop e3? Bishop h3. Well, bishop h3, I think f3. Knight c3. Yes, I thought about this move, but then I don't know what to do. No, you don't have this move. I don't think rook c1 works. So rook c1, rook c1. Okay, so bishop a4 actually can be played. And if queen takes, then it's bishop d4 with a double attack. If queen d3, let's say, then what can we do? Can we play rook c3? Yes, I think we can. So bishop a4 is really nice resource. But they didn't take. f3 was played first, and yes, it's a good move. Well, so your task is to suggest the next move to make the position more complicated. Do you think it should be knight c3? Knight takes, pawn takes, and you have a passed pawn, or you have better suggestions? Black isn't better in this position, for sure. d3 looks interesting. Bishop h3 is also a candidate. Okay, so bishop h3, but bishop h3, the idea is that once they take, they are in trouble, which is true. That's why they don't take. They have to play something else. So what's something else to play? No, maybe just bishop b2 and then take on d4. Because if I don't win a knight, then what's the purpose of bishop h3? And then knight d4 can be played, or even bishop d4 first. You can try knight c3 in this position, actually. So take, and knight c2, and then e3 or e4, e4. And then I think white simply realizes their extra rook. Okay, so I think now everything works again. Knight c3 should be a good move. No, we did cover knight c3. So as if the stream is lagging, then you'd better join a Zoom meeting. a6 to join the rook. Let's go back. So yeah, the other option is d3. So let's go over d3 line. So d3 attacks the rook, but is it winning? So let's say that, yeah, that, then takes, and then this. So we have a knight for a few pawns. And after we change the pawn structure, I don't think that you can play for a win, because a6, knight d4, which is fine. So maybe a6 should be played earlier, but still knight d4, and then what? This? No. Knight c3, queen d3 just. At which moment rook c3? I'll take rook c3. And what's the idea behind this move? Take with the queen, but you are not threatening checkmate. You're only threatening to take there. So let me push e3. Bishop h6 or h3? h3. So can't I play just this move? No, this is a mistake, right? No. Queen a8 check. No, queen f3 is okay move, actually. Okay, so instead of bishop so d3, let's go over this line. E takes d3 and knight g3. But I don't understand how knight g3 works. So pawn takes, what then? Bishop a1? It doesn't look good. Yeah, but well, what you did is you simplified the position. So now there is a knight for one pawn. But okay, so I can take on e7. Yes, I will take on e7, provoking this bishop to move. So bishop f3. What do you suggest? Bishop takes the knight on b5. Fine, but then what? Because I'm also threatening with something like that, or bishop h6 maybe. I think it's losing for black, and what I don't like is the position is simplified. So the game continued with a6 actually. So a6 right away. If a takes e4, it's a takes b5. So the bishop is tied down to the knight. Bishop b2, what would you suggest? Queen e4 in this position to defend the pawn, I think it's a good move actually. Yeah, looks good. Queen d3. And then I don't see a good move with the queen. Okay, f5. f5 to take there. f5, maybe bishop d4 works already. Bishop h3 again. Yeah, bishop h3 is interesting move. Because bishop h3, you threaten to take on e4, but I can play queen d3. Now f5. Yeah, now it makes definitely more sense. But this is a check, so this is what I'm gonna do. So let me first take on b5. Pawn takes, queen checks, king moves, and then knight d4. If bishop takes, then I take with a check, and then I play bishop e3, blocking the pawn. And if e3 right away, then it's knight f3. So, and it seems that I close it, and e5 move instead of e3. Okay, yes, you could try it, but how can I play? Knight c2, knight b5. Let me see. Because knight c2, rook c2, and then e3 works. Yeah, e5 actually is a good move. So this is where probably I have to sacrifice my my knight that way. But maybe it's still winning. Still extra exchange. And the position gets simplified. Well, if knight c2, there is a very nice solution. Rook c2, queen c2, e3. That works really well. So the idea originally was good, but it seems that with such a huge material advantage, even just queen e3 is enough. Yeah, okay. But you see, the position consists of a lot of tactical features, and white has to find accurate decisions. One mistake, the game can end in a loss quickly. So here, I don't know if Mikhail Tal would find it, but rook c4 is a very nice move. Well, we hang a lot, but let me show you. d4 is protected for now, and if he takes, then we have two passed pawns. You may say that we obligatory lose this one. Yes, we do, but look, bishop a4 with a tempo. In order to not lose the queen, they have to move it to d2, which is the only square to keep protecting d4. But then queen e4, and the bishop comes to c6. And at least there will be a perpetual check with queen h1. I don't know if Tal would find it. But luckily, that didn't happen in his game. His opponent didn't take on e4, which was probably the best move. His opponent took on d4. Queen d5. So queen d4 is a threat, which allows to win material. Or bishop d4 is a threat. Well, bishop d4, then e3. So queen d4 probably. This rook c3, double attack. Knight goes there. It seems that this move allows to simplify, but no, he keeps queens on the board. This move can be played, but if this move is played, then what do you think black should continue? Yes, queen e4 and bishop c6. That's right. So queen e4, the problem is that they cannot offer a queen straight and they cannot support the g2 square quickly. So even if it's done with a knight, we can always take it and deliver a checkmate. So the game continued with g4. That was okay. Queen e6 and bishop d4 offering a trade of bishops. So now imagine that you are Mikhail Tal. Which move would you play? What can I say in this position? Well, black is losing, but black is losing only in case if white plays accurately. So one suggestion is knight h5. Fine. I don't really understand the purpose of this move. So let's say they take on g7 and threaten with queen d4, after which it seems to me you have to offer a queen straight with queen e5 or queen f6. Because you don't have these. You have these, but what for? So knight h3, let's say king f1. King g2 maybe, but knight f4 then it's another check. I just don't want to calculate it. So yes, David. Uh-huh. Bishop c6 is another sacrifice. Okay, so with these sacrifices you're on the right way. Bishop a4. Bishop a4 is interesting. It's another pin, but it seems to me that the bishop should be there. Okay, how does it work? They take on g7 again, and queen d4 still becomes a threat. Fine. So Mikhail Tal plays h5. So he just undermines it with a pawn. He is okay with f takes e4. So for a takes e4, he has what? Queen g4. Queen g4 and then queen e4 and bishop c6. Or if the king goes there, bishop c6 right away. If king goes to f1, what then? Still bishop c6, or we have a better way to play? Maybe queen f4 works. Like queen f4, king g1, and then this threatening mate. Yes, it seems to work actually. So that's why f takes e4 doesn't work. Bishop g7. Yeah, bishop g7 should work. But after king takes g7, queen d4 doesn't win a rook. Moreover, in this position, black continues with this move. He even sacrificed there. Okay, what about h3? Yeah, let's discuss h3. It seems that g3 weakens dark squares too much. So h takes, and then maybe this is the possibility to draw the game with a perpetual check. So bishop g7 was played. H takes g4. Bishop c3 would lead to g3 and queen h3. So h takes, queen h3, and this is a perpetual check. What do you think? With which move white should play in this position to avoid a perpetual check? So white is still winning, but only if he plays only move. What is this only move I want you to find? It's queen takes d4, that's right. Let me explain how it works. Queen d4, g takes h2. Now what? So if the king takes, I think it's a disaster after queen h3. So king goes there, knight g3, king g2, queen h3 again. King escapes, but this is a mating threat. So it should be stopped with e5. Queen d6. Queen h4. And let's make one more move. Check. King. If king g7, then bishop e5 works. But if king h7, how should white play in this position to win the game? There is no checkmate. Just simple position with material advantage for white. Who can find the move? Erosh, can you please specify the reason of such a move you suggested? I think bishop e5 is too late, because then bishop e5 take on a3, take on g3. Okay. So I think bishop e5 isn't a good move. With bishop e5 you do threaten checkmate, but I wonder what you prepared against this, because now it's a check and h1 is the next move. With two queens, black definitely win. So the move that should be played is this. Queen h8, that's right. Queen h8, king has to take, bishop e5, king moves, and then bishop g3 just. And look at the material. It's two rooks and two knights to compensate the queen, and the h2 pawn dies. So this queen sacrifice allows white to win. So you see, well, from a computer point of view, black was completely losing here. But in order to find this losing move order, white has to play the only move several times, which is, for a human player, even for such a strong player like Portisch, is almost impossible. Okay, so the game continued with knight d4, a tempo move, queen d5. The queen may go to the other side, but the key idea is to operate through this diagonal. There is a knight, so it's not possible yet. So, but g3 is coming. Queen d4, knight c3. Okay, so where? Queen d4, knight c3, queen c3. In which position? No, all moves are okay. So here, but then how to win? It's completely losing. There is no checkmate. The king is well hidden. Okay, so knight d4, this. Okay, well. Knight c3 in this position, but queen c3 just. Queen h3 here. Okay. So then, okay, then probably just queen h4, queen g4, queen h4. And I'm still a few rooks up. Maybe I can sacrifice something. Okay, fine. Let's continue with the main move. Knight f3 was played. Why knight f3? Well, it attacks the rook and also closes the diagonal. Queen e3 check. King moves there to not fall under future checks. And bishop c6 pinning. That hangs this rook. Well, taking means g takes f3 and then bishop takes f3 and so on. They lose a queen, they lose more material. Well, I can show you. Take, take. So f2 is the next move, which is checkmate. This move is also good. So they have to take, then they lose their queen. Then they lose their bishop. And here you see it's queen and 3 pawns versus 2 rooks and knight. So black is definitely not losing and maybe even winning, because where does the knight go? And that's the moment where it was really hard to find a good move. And white played rook f1 and because of that lost the game. What do you think was the best way for white to play, which would allow them to save the game? Bishop d4. Bishop d4. Let me see how it works. I don't think it works because bishop d4 is still that. And if you take my queen, it's checkmate. I mean, queen d5, bishop d5. This is checkmate. So the best move was actually knight c2. After which queen f2 should be played. Well, you can try and capture, but after that, I'm attacking the bishop. So if this, it's that. If you take with a bishop, I take with my pawn and the queen goes that way, covering everything. So queen f2, bishop d4, attacking the queen, g takes f3, then bishop takes. You cannot push the pawn, you can take there, but after king g1, the king escapes. And materially, black is losing. So rook e7, that's all. That's the end. With the extra rook and with these pawns hanging, it's over. Knight c2 was that super move, but instead rook f1. Rook takes a3 just, and what we have is 3 pawns for the knight, but the knight is pinned. So it's already winning for black. Queen c1, he takes there. If queen e3, there is a check, and then you can win the rook. The game continued with queen c6. Oh, let me show you this. And this is winning with so many pawns. But if queen c6, then it's queen e2. Threatening checkmate there. This is not a move, there is a rook covering it. So the only way is to play this. After which, Mikhail Tal just took this bishop. And he is winning, but because of the pawn being there. So he is about to advance it. The game continued with this move, and he just moved to d2. They repeated the position. Oh, actually, wait, it's not winning. They repeated the position and agreed to a draw. So it's winning in case if they play something else. No, it's still, okay, it still seems to be drawish. So if they play, let's say, this move, then this, and this is how it's winning. But if they keep attacking the queen, it's a draw. So they repeated and agreed to a draw. Okay, so what you should remember from this game, that, well, I'm not asking you to play as sharp as Mikhail Tal, but you see Mikhail Tal at his level found such lines which required his opponent to play the only moves. So you remember he played h5 in this position. It's a weird move. How is it possible to play with a pawn if so many pieces are hanging? And in order to refute it, his opponent had to play a series of moves and find knight c2 in this position. So, and Lajos Portisch did play well, but at a certain moment he made a mistake, being under the pressure, and that finally resulted into a draw. But it's already an achievement for White. White was in such a terrible position, just one inaccuracy and the game would be over. Okay, so I have an unstable connection. Can you hear me well? Do you still see my screen? Okay, thanks. The next one. This position. So Michael Adams versus Jan Ehlvest. Well, the position is really sharp. Well, white to move, they played this move. Looks like there is a pin and it's fine. So black continues with queen h5. That potentially hangs the queen. Well, maybe here queen g3 should be played to keep this square under the control, to add more pressure on g6. But instead it was queen f4. So king goes to h7, knight g3 attacking the queen, but queen h6, and the endgame is more favorable for black. The pawn on b4 is a weakness. But they played this move. So what do you think how black should continue here? What you should understand, let's rewind a few moves before. So knight h5 was played, but after king h7, the knight retreated. The black's position was really firm, and white decided to retreat because he thought that his original plan with knight f5 failed. And this is where, well, he made a psychological mistake. So he retreated, he admitted that he was wrong, and that's why he started thinking that the whole concept was wrong and he was looking for something else. And this is where he played b5 move, trying to weaken here. Yes, then knight e3 followed. So b takes c6, maybe the line that white had in mind in this position was knight f1, after which knight takes f1, queen f4, rook f4, and there is a pressure on f7 and d5. So technically white is down exchange, but they win one of these two pawns. And then black has maybe even both, and black has just a few pawns, and black is definitely not playing for a win after that, even with extra exchange. What do you think black should play in this position instead of taking the exchange? Taking on g4 doesn't make much difference. It's still the same issue. In case of that, it's bishop d5 coming. If you take the pawn on c6, you lose on f7. So you cannot do it. Black could try to trade, and if they trade it, then this move. Knight g2, getting the bishop. King takes. Rook c6, it's still rook f7. Maybe you can defend it with the king. But then maybe it's rook f6 or rook c1 just. What is better? Yeah, rook f6, bishop f6. So it seems that maybe it's too optimistic to sacrifice exchange like that. Maybe still rook g4. Okay, let's rewind a little. Yeah, queen f4 was a possible way for black to save the game. Black played even better. They played this. So they didn't take exchange right away. And this is how they want to take with this rook. How to play. It seems there is no good move. So there is no this. There is no something like that because of the bishop. So they traded and tried to add pressure. But then just knight f1. And knight f1, knight f1, bishop g5, rook moves, and finally this. I mean, this can be played for sure, but after rook c3, this pawn is vulnerable. So if they defend, then king comes and defends on f7. And this is where black definitely has more chances to win. I would say it's almost winning. Now, this is a blunder, for example, right? Rook f7 is a blunder, right? Why is it a blunder? That's right. So rook f7, bishop f7, then rook f3 is a fork. Okay. So bishop f7. What about bishop f7 first? Bishop f7 is not a blunder. It's a possible move, I think. So bishop f7. Then you just take there. King moves. Now, bishop to h4. So it's hanging. Actually, nice idea. Yes, you can do so. He does rook f4. But then what? G5? Oops. Actually, king g5 is the best move, I think. No, rook g4. No, it's not the best. And he takes there. G5, he does rook f6. And then king g2. No, g5, rook f6, there is a bishop hanging, you're right. So bishop e6 then. G4, rook f4. So yeah, after bishop f7, I think you... No, well, bishop h4, right? But after rook f4... Here, king g2. Then bishop g5. Rook c3. Rook cc3, right? But it's not, you're not threatening a check on g3. So maybe he just advances the d pawn. Okay, so a bit unclear. Maybe this, bishop g5, then if king h3, bishop f4, And then you can play this position for a win, because if e6, then bishop d6, you can successfully stop the pawns. And actually, and with this move, if they play something else, with this move you are restricting the knight, because in both cases the knight will be pinned. Fine. Anyway, the game continued with this move. It wasn't the best option. They played that, check, knight f1, knight f5, that defends there, and d5 is not hanging. Rook here, bishop g5, rook f2, and bishop h4. So this is where they resigned. Well, it wasn't the best way to play, actually. So the best move was this, with the idea to bring the second rook. For example, how to play? It seems that you can attack the pawn, but then it's bishop e3. If rook f3, rook c2. And you are threatening to take on f1, which is checkmate. Knight f1, rook f1, knight g3. Or you threaten to play this move, which is an attack here. And if king g2, it's knight h4 fork. So here you have multiple threats. If they defend with king h2, that's fine. Rook f4, and then you make a pin and exploit it with two rooks. There is no defense. Well, for example, I don't actually understand the line. So at which moment? So here it's already over. I cannot even find a good move. It's like a stalemate. Oh, sorry, it's like a Zugzwang. So 93? No. 93, this mate. This move maybe. This. How to defend? You can defend. You can defend with, so rook here, rook there. You can defend with rook g4. No, knight d4 is a candidate move, but maybe there is something else. All right. Let's just wait. Rook e2. Also, there is this move with the idea of knight h4. Okay, so, well, it's really hard to find a move. That's why he resigned. But what was the main feature of this example? After knight f5 and after the knight retreated, White realized that they made a mistake. But actually, it wasn't such a significant mistake. They just didn't know what to do, and that's why they decided that they were a wrong move, and because of that, their position should be worse. And that's why, in order to save it, they have to play active actions like that. But they missed 93 resource. So instead, they should follow their plan and try to be more confident with it. Okay, fine. The next is a really nice example. Actually, let's make it our last example. There will be one more, which I'm going to share tomorrow when I publish a post on chess.com in my blog. However, before we continue with our last example, it's a really long one. It's the game between Alexander Goldin versus Alexander Morozevich. So before we continue with it, I would like you to know that if you enjoy my content, if you like these workshops, you can always support me by sending a donation using this link. So how it works? You just click the button, enter the amount you want to donate. It can be any amount. Click PayPal. It redirects you to PayPal, and then you can say send it to my account. So the workshops are free, but I really appreciate any help. The other way to do it is through Wise, especially for Europeans. One more thing. So this is my website. And recently I published 3 courses. These 2, Attack and Defense Guide for Club Players and Improve Your Endgame Technique, are the recordings of our group sessions that we had a while ago. So if you didn't attend them, then you might be interested in purchasing it. But this comprehensive guide for club players is an absolutely new course. It was recorded in December, or it was recorded in October. So, and until the end of the day, you can purchase it with a 60% discount due to Black Friday sale. So let me show you. So first of all, it's almost a 12 hours course, and it's a comprehensive guide. So you can improve all your skills after passing this course. So we cover openings, middle games, tactics, end games, calculation, and decision making. I also provide you with examples of how you should train yourself. So how to get it? No, actually, let me share the link with you, and then I continue this explanation. So this. So you click buy now, for example, if you are interested in this course, and then you have to implement a coupon code, which is Black Friday 25. So here you click apply, and the amount decreases. This is how it works. So don't forget to use this code. It's also valid for my other courses, the ones that I mentioned. So if, for example, you decide to purchase other courses, you can still do it on this web page. That would support me too, so I really appreciate, and you also may find it really helpful, especially if you don't know how to prepare for the tournament. And well, I think the price is reasonable, especially for a 12 hours course. So this is the link if you are interested in other courses too. But I think that you might be familiar with these ones: Improve Your Endgame Technique and Attack and Defense Guide for Club Players. So again, these are, yeah, it shows actually the price with a Black Friday discount. So these are our group sessions recorded. And this comprehensive guide is a brand new course. Fine. Let's continue with our main topic and finish the lesson with the analysis of the game, of the full game between Alexander Alekhine and Alexander Goldin. C4. So guys, what you usually play here? This is where, okay, so c6, Slav defense, perfect. Who else? Queen's Gambit, Slav defense, okay. So I play Slav or semi-Slav too. E6, yes, Queen's Gambit declined, right? So these are natural moves, and this is what Alexander Goldin expected Alexander Morozevich to play. But it was Morozevich, and he was known as a he was known as an uncomfortable opponent, and he did analyze the games that Goldin plays, so, and wanted to surprise him. He surprised him with knight c6 move, the so-called Chigorin defense. It's definitely not the best way to play against Queen's Gambit, and after that, white is completely fine, but only if white exactly knows what to do. But that experienced grandmaster Alexander Goldin wasn't familiar with it, and he was playing based on his overall understanding of the opening. He continued with knight c3, that makes sense, to attack d5. Morozevich took on c4, d5, fine, knight e5, and this is where Goldin started making mistakes already. What do you think is the best way for white to play in this position? E4, what about knight d3 then? Maybe e4, actually, e4 e6, I think, first. So the best way is f4, because there is no knight d3. Let me show you again. So e4, just e6. f4, I'm gonna play knight d3. And if this, I take with my bishop. So f4, knight g6, and now e4. So why now e4 is better? Because if now this, it's d takes e5. So let's say the queens are exchanged, and then the bishop cannot take because of f5. The pawn takes, bishop takes, and white has serious positional advantage. They have a better center control, this is a weakness, and the bishop is bad. This is how Goldin should play, but he just didn't know it, and his opening understanding wasn't sufficient to find it. Well, bishop f4 in this position is not a good decision, because then knight g6 and what? e5, let's say, en passant, then bishop e6. So the bishop is restricted here. So he played queen d4. It's not bad, but it's definitely not so good as f4. Knight goes to g6. Now, Goldin, so he realized his queen is in the center, the queen cannot be attacked, and he needs to take the pawn on c4 by developing the bishop. And with e4, he gets the center control. I'm sure almost everyone, including me, at this group session would definitely play such a move. That was the second inaccuracy of white. So the best way to play was queen c4. And after a6, the queen goes to b3. This pawn is protected, and it's tough to continue development because, for example, doing e6 here fails. There is a pawn hanging. So a6, queen b3, knight f6, g3, then bishop g2, supporting the pawn, and that would make the black's position uncomfortable. But he played e4. So he thought, okay, I'm gonna take it, and once I do it, I'm fine. Actually, no, it's e5. And en passant is a blunder. So now he has to make a queen move. He decides to take. Bishop d6. So still not bad, but black pieces are already well placed. It's not a super good bishop, for sure, but at the same time, black position is very solid. h4. Looks like a logical move, right? So if h5, for example, which is a common reaction, then it's bishop g5, and the g5 is a really good square for the bishop, and white black can hardly get rid of the pin, so they have to move the bishop back, but that we can c7. But h6 to stop bishop g5 mainly. Can you please tell me what would you play if you were white? So imagine you are quite a strong player with a good opening understanding. You know basic principles. You want to grab space here. You played h4 recently. Your opponent reacted with h6. So which move would you play here? Okay, so David suggests h5. Anybody else? Oh, I don't understand the purpose of queen a4. It's just bishop d7. Do you want to play queen b3 then? Well, maybe, and I think it's not a mistake, but I don't understand why this queen move was required? Oh, bishop b5. Oh, bishop b5, I think if we trade, well, maybe. Maybe that was better compared to what was played in the game. In the game, it was h5. Everyone would play h5, but it's already a misunderstanding. This pawn is likely to be a weakness in future. While it's not doing any help for this, it doesn't make it doesn't improve the white's position. So, well, here you suggested, yeah, g3 was a possible move. Here you suggested bishop knight f4, I think. Knight f4, and then what? Queen b5? Queen b5, queen d7 works. So bishop takes. Then you can play e5, and queen e7 here doesn't look good. Yeah, but then rook e1. It should fail, so how can you play knight g4 in this position? Well, I think this is winning. So there is no knight d3, bishop d3, the rook is protected. There should be f6 played to not lose it. And just, let's say queen g3, I'm threatening with this, because you cannot unpin. You can castle or you can move the queen, but it's only one piece. However, there are two behind. So I think you just lose a knight then. So knight f4 isn't a good move. After h5, it was played knight e7, the knight goes back to the game. It seems that white played natural moves, but at the same time, they already made their position worse. Well, this is where they should retreat. But they play knight d2 to protect this and maybe to protect h5 to be able to castle to the king side. b5 is good after queen d3, c6, but Morozevich played c6 right away. For example, if now white castles, it's b5, queen d3, c takes. If e takes, it's bishop f5. The queen is trapped. In order to defend the queen, they have to play this and let us take the pawn on d5. That's why after c6, he had to take that, but that improves the knight. So look at these pieces. White played h5, which resulted into a weakness. And they play knight d2 to defend it. And they have their queen being the object of the attack. While black improved the position of their pieces and now has initiative. The game continued with rook d1. So your turn. Imagine you're Alexander Morozevich. Of course, you can play bishop e6 move. b5 doesn't work. You hang the knight on c6. So of course you can play bishop e6, but maybe you can suggest a better move. What do you think? Knight d4. I don't fully understand the purpose of knight d4. What if they take on d4 just? Just open the position with knight d4, but I don't think you should. Yeah, the king in the center probably tells that we are better developed. But here the queen is the object of the attack, so let's take advantage of that. I think it's a more important factor that the king being in the center, especially when we see that just one move and they can castle successfully. Knight d4, and if king... No. Uh, Yeah, so knight d4 works if the king is already castled, but with the king on e1 it doesn't. So Morozevich here plays knight b4, threatening this. Well, taking on e3 eliminates an important dark-squared bishop as well as double pawns and weakens the position overly. So that's why queen b3. Then b5 to restrict enemy pieces coming. The next move is this, which means that they have to sacrifice material. That's why Goldin plays rook e1, vacating the d1 square for the queen. So if, let's say, he did, for example, castling, after bishop e6, he would lose material. So knight d5, you can take on d5. Queen e3, then knight c2. So that's why rook a1. And it seems to me that at this point, he understood that he was really doing wrong moves. And his position is no longer better, no longer favorable. So he has to defend. And I think that undermined him from a psychological point of view. So, well, yeah, you can play this. You can then bring the rook to c8. That works. But that's the moment where Morozevich understood it. And instead of just logically develop his pieces, he was creating even more threats to confuse his opponent. He played that, threatening to take there. If, let's say, this move was played, what do you think Black had in mind? Right, but knight d3 requires calculation. After king e2, this is hanging. So if you just take there, they take here, and you don't really have a discovered attack with this bishop. So you can deliver a check. This fails. This fails because you can checkmate them with queen g5 and then queen g2. So that's why they have to take it. Then bishop takes, it's a check, and the next move is this, so they have to gain a tempo. But then the bishop retreats to e6, the queen must move, and then e takes f4. And in this position, with the bishop pair and the king is on e2, black is definitely winning. So that's the reason why such a move wasn't played. And instead they played knight f1, allowing this favorable trade. Bishop c5, and there is nothing they can do to defend against a tactical blow. Castle bishop e6. How to play? Well, if this move, it's bishop e3, and after queen d8, it's bishop f2, you win a pawn. If f takes e3, I think it's just a losing position. For example, queen g5, then rook here, then maybe knight c2, depends on where the queen goes. That's why this is where he played that move, and yeah, knight e5, not cd5. Because why not this knight? If this knight, then you first take, and then you win the pawn on d5. Ah, you mean that after this you play that? Then bishop d4, or maybe there is a5. Bishop d4, I think, is a good move. Ah, then knight e7. Okay. Yeah, knight cd5, and then knight has to take on d5. Yeah, that was a possible decision, but he played with this knight. So what do you think was the next move of black? Should black take? Should black play a5? Or what? f5 idea is nice, but they just play a3, driving the knight back, because if you take, it's e takes, and you don't open the file. their file, I mean, to attack f2. Queen where? g5. Queen g5 looks interesting. Let's say queen d1 to unpin, then maybe they can like choose this defensive strategy. Okay, so yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense, but there is a better move. So right, a5 I think doesn't work. So a5 they can take on b5 first of all, or they can try a3, and if a4 they just retreat to d1. But knight c6 and rerouting the knight, that makes a lot of sense. Even after queen d1, the knight goes to d4. So b4 is already a problem. That's why rook c1. Can you play b4? Well, yes, but then this bishop is the object of the attack. That's why Morozevich continues with queen g5. All black pieces participate in the attack, except these rooks. So the rooks should move. If, for example, here he would play this discovered attack, what would you continue? Yeah, queen takes c1 first, and then take the bishop with a knight. So that's why, to stop it, they played this move. But once the rook comes, there is no way they can do anything. So there is a discovered attack on this. The game continued with that move, and this is where we can use John's idea with f5. And the whole position ruins. So how to play? Well, take, you take there. Not take, then what? I gonna take, and after queen takes, I take on e2. So b4 was played, kind of a counter play, but then this, if queen takes, it's knight e2, so the queen goes to d2, and in this position, just rook d5, threatening with a fork of knight f3, a discovered attack. This is where Alexander Goldin resigned. So, what was that trick that made Morozevich? Yeah, bishop h3 is possible. Yes, but bishop h3, g3, and you only win exchange. So, what was that trick that Alexander Morozevich won the game because of? So, first of all, he chose the opening. Right. So Alexander Morozevich chose that opening that Alexander Goldin wasn't prepared for. And at the same time, if it's a human player playing such an opening, he may follow logical basic principles of how to play, like fight for the center with the pawns, activate pieces. And he didn't fully realize these peculiarities. For example, that there is a discovered attack, and then that e5 allows to get the center control. And that then white has to play rapidly, and that h4, h5 isn't actually a helpful feature for white, but instead makes the pawn vulnerable. So he kind of predicted this type of moves because, well, such type of moves is common for a grandmaster. Even for a grandmaster, because they seem to be logical in other positions. Well, the knight is on g6, who wants to chase it with h4, h5? Almost everyone. But then h5 is a weakness, and extra space that white obtained with such a move doesn't really matter, because after c6 the place of action goes to the center, and with the pawn on h5, queen comes to g5, well, this piece is moves, but then queen comes to g5 and black starts the attack. Okay, so that was the feature, and then white wasn't developing their pieces properly, and instead Once black opened the position, he increased the number of threats and as well as the pressure. And finally, once he brought all his pieces to the attack, the enemy queen was in a dangerous situation, and because of that, that failed. So that early queen movement in the development finally resulted into a loss of a game, together with other mistakes of white. Okay, fine. So that's all for today. Well, do you have any questions? Yes, because d4 becomes a strong square and occupying it provides black with advantage. Okay, so fine. If there are no examples, thank you for joining. So don't forget about these new courses published on my website. If you have any questions, you can always message me at tricksofchess@gmail.com. Also, if you enjoyed these workshops and you know chess players who might be interested in attending them, you can invite them. I would really appreciate if you invite your friends there. Fine. See you next Sunday, same time. Bye bye.